All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this edition of Myrtle Beach Living Live. I am so happy with our guests today. We have Arvi and Dave here out of Nashville, Tennessee. They're with Ace Homes, and they are professional flippers and investors, and we are excited about that. Just want to make a note that if you have any questions whatsoever during the show, please just type them in your the social media platform that you're watching, and we'll get those on air for you, and we'll try to answer as many of those as possible. As well, we want to say that you can call in live now. So you can call us anytime at 843-246-7474. And look, we already have Beverly here. Hey, Beverly, good to have you with us. Make sure you ask those questions if you have any. So Arvi and Dave, welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for the nice intro.
Yeah, well, you know, I am looking forward to this. We have a lot of viewers that have asked us about flipping and investing properties, so I think you guys are the perfect couple to bring on and talk about that a little bit. So let's start out with where you guys are from originally, how you got to the U.S., because I know you're both from outside of the country, and then what took you to Nashville.
Right. So I was born and raised for most of my life in Albania, which is a small country in Europe. I moved here to the States when I was about 17, I believe. And, you know, just kind of went straight into high school here and then went to college in Buffalo, New York, actually. And that's where I started with real estate right after college and just ended up here in Nashville. I came here for a visit once with my brother. It was his birthday present gift from me. And I just really loved Nashville and I thought it was a great real estate market. So we just kind of decided to move here.
Awesome. Yeah. What about you, Dave?
I was born and raised in a small country of Suriname in South America. I moved here when I was 14 on a basketball scholarship. I played in high school, I played in college, and that's where we met. She mentioned before we met in college. After that, she kind of pulled me in. I was a full-time coach for 1 year, and she needed some assistance when it comes to rehabs and all that stuff. So I said, no, might as well give it a shot.
And you were coaching in Florida, right?
I was coaching in Florida, yeah. I was coaching for
you up to Nashville.
Yeah.
But then I moved back to Buffalo, and then we completed a couple of properties. And then she went on a visit, and we ended up moving to Nashville.
Oh, that's cool. So you followed the woman. Way to go. So what made you guys decide to get into investing in real estate, and you know, what kind of led you down that path?
Right. So I was in college. It was my last year. I was kind of doing an online master's as well. And honestly, I was applying to a lot of jobs. I wasn't getting anything. I was going on to interviews and all these things. And I remember having a conversation with my dad, you know, like I'm doing all these things and I'm not getting any callbacks. And he said, well, why don't you do something for yourself? You know, try to find a business or something. And I said, well, what? I don't know what to start. And he's like, well, look into real estate. I don't know how or why, because I've never been involved in real estate like that. So I just honestly started looking stuff up online on YouTube and Google, and I kind of never looked back from there.
Went to the University of Tube, huh?
Yeah.
Well, your dad must have been talking to somebody that was telling him about real estate, and it just happened to be on his mind.
Right. I actually have not asked him to this day why he told me that, so maybe I'll do that.
Yeah, that's a good question for him. So I know that you guys focus a good bit on flipping properties as well as wholesaling properties. Tell us a little bit about the difference of what you're doing there and how you chose those two paths, I guess. Because you're not a real estate agent, correct?
I am, no.
Neither are you, Dave, right?
No.
Dave's the handyman guy, right?
Yep.
All right. Sorry, go ahead. Answer.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I first started, I jumped right into flipping, not wholesaling. I actually didn't even know that wholesaling, it was a possibility. So I bought my first property and, you know, I was working my way towards that one. And then from there, I got a second and a third. And that was like my first year of flipping 3 houses. On my second year, it was actually when we moved to Nashville, I started looking into, okay, how can I scale this a bit quicker and trying to get more profit in while I'm out doing flips. So that's when I kind of stumbled upon wholesaling and just basically started to do that as well.
Yeah, we were in Buffalo and we're doing the flips, but we started realizing that the profits weren't really what we wanted. So we started looking at different routes into getting basically properties off market.
Yeah.
And that way that can increase, that takes off all the costs from like the agents and all that stuff. So that can increase our profit when it comes to flips. So
that's what you mean by wholesaling, that you're going out there and seeking after properties that are not listed on the multiple listing service or on Zillow or whatnot.
Yep.
Right.
You're taking those properties and going to the seller and saying, hey, we can help you get this sold type thing, and you'll save some money doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. So wholesaling basically means when I already have it under contract with the seller. So that's right. I go direct to seller, my own marketing into getting them under contract with me. And then I sell that property to another investor that's looking to flip just like I am for a bit of profit, just to make me some, because sometimes we have projects going on that where, our cash is all out. So we're just trying to bring some in to support us, until we get that cash back. So the wholesaling helps with that. It's a quicker profit and we don't have to put any money into it.
And sometimes you can find those properties that you decide to flip yourself as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, cool. Arvi, I know that you do every time you pick a property, because you do more of the sourcing of the properties and Dave does more of the overseeing the construction. Mm-hmm. So when you pick a property, you do kind of like a business plan that you've done that kind of walks through everything you're going to do with that property, the changes you want to make and whatever. We're specifically talking about the flipping portion right now. So can you talk a little bit more about that and how you come up with those items that you want to put into that plan? Because you also use this plan to seek out investment help, correct? Especially in the beginning?
Yeah, absolutely. So usually, yes, what you said is I take a look at the property. I make sure that my numbers are good in terms of rehab. And that's how I come up with my purchase price that I present to the potential seller or home seller. Once I have them under contract, I usually do, obviously, I look at all in the area. I see what's out there, what's currently selling, what the condition of those properties is. And that's kind of how I determine what kind of rehab I'm going to do. You always don't want to over rehab on a property that's probably not worth that same rehab. You're not going to rehab the same way a property that's worth $250,000 from a property that's worth $1 million. So obviously, you have to take all that stuff into account. And I do a proposition. I write down everything that needs to be done item by item, as detailed as possible. And then from there, like you said, I use it for seeking investments or contractor bids or, literally anything to just kind of show that I've done my research and, like this is what I'm looking to do. On top of that, I also try to have like a multiple so in case it doesn't work. So if my first goal is to wholesale this property to another investor and for some reason nobody buys it at that time, for sure that I can flip that myself. And for some reason the flip goes really, wrong and, I kind of messed up on all my numbers and I have a third strategy to like whether either I can rent it out and kind of hold it to make that profit maybe a little bit in the future or just kind of cut my losses and sell it.
Cool. So Beverly's got several questions that she's posted here, but let me just pick out a couple of them. One of them that is probably a no-brainer is what was the biggest mistake you guys made starting out?
Oh gosh, so that was my mistake on my first flip. I looked at the property; it needed foundation work, and I underestimated that obviously. So that was I budgeted I think $20,000 for those foundation work, and it ended up costing like $35,000.
I do have to state that I was not. This was the year that I was still coaching in Florida when all this happened. I think that when that foundation issue happened and she mentioned it to me and she called me and said, Dave, I think I might need your help when it comes to the rehabs. And I saw it in her eyes. I need to go.
Don't blame Arvi on this.
No, I'm not blaming.
I never had any type of rehabs because obviously I didn't even own my own house at that point, so it was completely brand new. But you live, you learn.
Well, and I'm sure Dave, since you handle and hire most of the subcontractors, that it helps. And I'm assuming you do this is you hang out with them to see what they're looking for, what changes that they need to make to be able to resell the home. but that also is information that Arvi can take and when she looks at the next property.
Yeah.
So how do you go about picking those subcontractors? What do you look for in that?
So actually, I recently started posting every Tuesday on my Instagram account about some tips for beginners, that people that want to get into rehabs and the flips. And the way I find my subcontractors, I basically find through referrals. It might seem simple, but if you, for example, have a good plumber that that plumber most of the time knows a good electrician.
Mm-hmm.
So I go based off that. Referrals. The second way I do it is
flips. When we're first starting a flip, yeah.
The second way is also every let's say major city has like a group chat on Facebook.
Real estate
group chat on Facebook. Many people don't know that you can search a keyword. Let's say you're looking for a painter. You can literally just look up painter, and the most recent post of people that were looking for painters, it shows up, and people put their recommendations. What I usually do is I see what name pops up at least twice, and I give them a call.
That's awesome. That's a great way to do that. And people are slow to put out positive reviews, but they sure will put a negative one out in a heartbeat. Yeah. That's pretty cool to do that. Go ahead.
I do have to state that the kind of the key to this, why I'm doing it, is many people try to Google search for contractors. And most of the time you will find the companies that are dealing with regular retail clients, and they'll give you retail prices.
Right.
But if you do it this way, you get the contractors that are used to investors, and that way you can build a relationship, because if you're doing one flip, trust me, you're going to do one more, and you're going to do two next year. Mm-hmm.
So one of the other questions we have here is, how do you choose, or how do you go about getting the funding, especially when you're starting out? I'm sure that you take a percentage once you start selling properties and put that back, if you will, so that you can invest in another one. But when you're first starting out, how do you go about getting the funding if you don't have it?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's multiple ways to start. For what worked for me was kind of like what I mentioned earlier. I built a packet of, I have this property. This is what my numbers are, that what I think, this is my contractor's bid on how much it's going to cost. And these are the comps in the neighborhood on the sales and what I think I can sell it for. So the more you present yourself as what you know what you're doing and credible, the more chances of you getting funding are. Now, obviously, you have to have some type of savings because you still have to put some of your own money into it. But, explaining that and just kind of explaining what my company vision was, what I was trying to achieve. And this is not just like a one and done deal for me. Like, I want to keep using you. So just kind of telling yourself and making sure that you know what you're talking about.
You talk about private and hard money lenders.
Yeah.
Right. And then after you have finished the project and after the investor gets their portion back, do you, I'm sure you split the proceeds. How do you go about, what percentage do you do as far as the split on average?
So usually when I'm just seeking funding, that's just, so they have like a certain percentage. What we've been working with so far, it's like a 12% and 2 to 3 points. And that's all they get. So the rest of the profit is mine. Now,
so that's good. It's not a 50-50 like a lot of people think it is.
No, and you can do it that way, absolutely. So there's some investors that will be willing to lend all of the money, so you don't have to put any of your own in there. Maybe you don't have it, and they'll just require that you do the 50-50 split at the end.
Yeah, well, that's cool. Hey, we got another question here from Sarah. Sarah is over in Renton, Washington.
Okay.
On the other side of the country, and she wants to know, how do you choose which off-market houses to pursue? What do you look for there, I guess?
In terms of like, how do I find them, or?
Sure. That's how I read it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So usually,
and what makes you choose that particular property, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. So how I market for like off-market deals, I guess, is I try to find some motivation as to why these people would want to sell to me. So maybe they're going through a divorce, maybe they're in pre-foreclosure, maybe they have a big judgment against them on the property, or they have bills that they can't pay. So just the main thing is to look for motivation as to why they would want to sell to you, because obviously they're selling to you for less than what they would sell with a realtor. And maybe they can afford to wait for the realtor, or they just don't have enough money to kind of do the repairs for their, the inspection period and all that stuff. So always trying to look for a motivation on why they would want to sell to you.
Right. And I do know that I've heard that when you first got started, it sounds now like you kind of do a lot of this on your own and you don't use a real estate agent. Since I'm a real estate agent, I want you to use me, of course. But when you did start out at first, you were using a real estate agent, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So my first year investing on my first 3 flips, I used a real estate agent and I found those houses on market. So it's not impossible to find houses, with real estate agents. It's just that maybe the profit is not where you'd want to be. And we were okay with that to begin with because we wanted to get that experience. But
Sure.
we do use those agents on the selling side. So when we go ahead and sell those, we have an agent that we list them with.
But don't get me wrong, you can find properties through agents. One of our properties in Buffalo is actually cash flowing around, I think, $1,400 a month now, and that property we found through an agent. So don't get me wrong, you can always use your agent, especially if it's the agent somebody you trust and knows the market when it comes to the investment side.
Well, and sometimes an agent actually knows properties that are going to be coming up on the market as well that haven't been listed yet. I've had a couple myself already that I know that are going to be investment flipping properties, and before it hits the market, I can call and say, hey, instead of me spending all my marketing money, I can give you that lead and discount my services if I need to, or whatever. So is that $1,400 property you mentioned in Buffalo, is that a rental property that you guys have?
Yeah.
So you keep some of the properties as rentals as well?
Yes. Yeah. We do a bunch of stuff. Our kind of bread and butter is flipping and wholesaling, but we also keep flips and we do some short-term rentals like on Airbnb and stuff like that.
We actually have done 2 house hacks right now so far.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I keep telling people, and real estate is the way to invest, because once you have them paid off, that's mostly profit aside from your taxes, insurance, but that's an upkeep, but that's mostly profit. And that's a great way to retire. And you guys are young enough that that's going to be awesome for you. So I tell you what, guys, let's take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some things that they do to get those properties ready with Arvi and Dave. And we'll be right back after these messages. Stay tuned. Every client is unique and has different needs. Whether it's a growing family, a first-time buyer, an investor, or someone looking to downsize, I am here to help guide them through the process. My name is Todd Cartner. I am a realtor with Exit Coastal Real Estate Pros. I serve Myrtle Beach and the surrounding area, and there is no place I would rather have my family call home. You need a realtor you can trust and will put your needs first. I want to become your lifetime realtor. If you are looking to buy or sell real estate, please give me a call. I look forward to speaking with you soon. All right, guys, welcome back to Myrtle Beach Living Live. I'm Todd Cartner, your host right here in Myrtle Beach. And we have with us today Arvi and Dave, who are with Ace Homes out of Nashville, Tennessee. And we're talking about investing and flipping properties as well as wholesaling properties. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to type them in the comments. We'll try to get them on air as well. You can call in at 843-246-7474. So, guys, welcome back. Let's talk about staging your property. I know that once you have flipped it and it's ready to go and you're ready to sell it, you like to stage your properties. Tell us a little bit about that process, how you go about it, and also I'd like to know kind of what budget do you set there. And I'm sure that depends on the property, but just talk a little bit about that, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've used a couple of different ways to stage them. One of my main tips that I did in the beginning when my profit margins weren't as high and I was trying to save money is kind of staging it myself and going through a rent-a-center, if you're familiar with them. You can rent pretty much anything you can think of inside the house from them. And just if you have a little bit of an eye on what to do and how to stage different stuff, You can just go through there. It saves you some money, and it's a great rental. It's a great strategy. They'll come and set it up even for you, and then they'll come and pick it up, so you don't have to do any of the lifting and all that stuff yourself. And then
so the guys that are delivering it that know you're for staging, they're like, we got to come back and get this in a couple of weeks.
Yes,
That's great.
Yeah, that's true.
I actually have a friend of mine that does staging, and she actually goes to a bunch of yard sales and just buys more of the decorative items like paintings or prints to hang on the wall or something like that. And she just has a small warehouse that she uses because that way she's not having to rent it over and over. She does rent the big furniture because she wants to make sure it stays nice and clean and fresh and up to date. But as far as everything else, she uses that, which I thought was pretty cool. So
yeah. Yeah, this is like one of the main things we used. Right now, I've kind of switched into using an actual stager. And obviously, as I mentioned before, like it'll depend on the property and the price point too. So we kind of go off of that. If it's lower than maybe like 250 or 300 in our market, we'll decide whether we want to like stage it, spend the money on staging, or it will just sell itself because the neighborhood, does not require that type of staging. So.
And I know Nashville has a lot of different areas that have different price points, but just on average, so people that are watching can understand your margins or your price point. What does a 2-bedroom, 3-bath, 1,500 square foot in an average neighborhood sell for there, roughly?
Probably around like 250.
250?
2-bath, yeah.
So okay, so if you buy those properties and you can get them under 100,000 and put 75,000 into them, you're good to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's cool. So let's talk about once you've purchased the property and you're ready to go, and I really like focusing on this flipping part for today. But how do you set up your timelines, and how easy or hard is it to stick to them? And I know that depends a lot on the subcontractors, Dave, but just talk a little bit about that, if you will.
All right. So in the beginning, the most important step is to get everything lined up. As soon as you have a property on the contract, or for sure you're about to get on the contract, start calling your subs, start reaching out for referrals, start doing your research on subs, and start getting quotes in. I think that's one of the most important things to do, starting off when it comes to flipping.
And staying on track, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're usually like, especially if they're good subs, they're not going to be ready for you, the next day if you call them today. So they're going to need a couple of weeks. So if you bring them in before, then they get their time to give you the price on what all that's going to cost, and then tell you, okay, I'll be ready, when the house closes. So on the first day,
if they are available the next day, they're probably not good.
Right.
I wouldn't think anyway. So that's great. Now, Dave, how did you come about getting the timeline and like knowing that in week 1 you're going to need the structural people, week 3 you need the sheetrock people, week 5 you need the painters or whatever? How did you come about that timeline?
That's that was kind of more experienced, trial and error, basically. I just follow the steps, the guidelines when it comes to rehabs of knowing what goes first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and that I just basically space it out for a week and a half, depending on how big the project is.
So is it easy to stay on time?
It is.
I'm sure it gets better as you go along.
It's hard, but it's definitely hard to stay on track. But what I've learned is if you're going the subcontractor route, it's important not to treat the subcontractor as a GC. Because you're going to get one subcontractor in there, he's going to say, oh, I can do this, that, and that. That's a big mistake. I give my subs 1 to 2 things to do.
Right.
Like my insulator guy does my drywall as well. Those go hand in hand. I don't give him doors and trim and paint, because if you're going to treat them as GCs, they're going to just they're just going to disappear for a week or 2, and then they're going to call you back like, oh, I'm ready now.
Right.
And if I'm sorry, Arvi, go ahead.
No, that's like the biggest criticism we have for contractors in general, that they don't know how to keep timelines. So if you give them a lot, then they're not going to be good at kind of staying on track. So.
And Dave, I've heard you say before too that you keep a percentage of their pay out to make sure that they finish the job, which I think is important.
Yeah, so I live by there's two things I always like mention. Contractors have three qualities, top three qualities, and that's quality, price, and on time. If you're an investor, you're most likely have to pick two if you want to stay in your budget, two out of the three. You want to get all three, which is possible. I mean, I provide that to my clients, which is possible in a decent price. But if you want all three, you're most likely going to pay the premium price, and that's not what you want. So picking two out of the three is definitely something I work by.
And that kind of goes all hand in hand because time is money, regardless if it's time that it takes you to complete it so you can resell it or time to get making sure that it's not interfering with the next person, because they have the next contractor you bring in already has something lined up after you. So they have to stay in that window as well. So if the one before it is running behind, that just messes everything up. Again, is money, because now you may have to change contractors midstream.
And as far as the pay, we use a tactic when it comes to 25%, 25%, and then 50%. Usually we like to pay the subcontractors the first 25% when they show up to the job. I don't like to give contractors, I mean, that's me. Sometimes it might not work out that way, because if you have, for example, a kitchen that needs to be remodeled, you definitely need to give the deposit because of all the material that needs to be ordered. But for smaller jobs, I definitely stick with the 25, 25, 50. Then the first 25 is when they start. The second 25 is when they're 50% done. And the end, they get the rest of the 50%. However, I do, if there's an inspection in place, I do take off about 1,500 to 1,000. I keep behind till I pass inspection.
Well, of course, because if it doesn't pass the inspection, they've got to come back and finish it.
Exactly.
Right. That makes sense. So, so guys, what kind of tips or tricks, if you will, that you would have when we talked about the funding earlier, and there was a website I believe you guys went to when you first got started that you found by doing your University of Tube and Google research, and there was a website that you went to that kind of helped you move along a little bit quicker. Can you talk a little bit about that?
In terms of like how to flip or
finding the funding, finding the funds.
Oh, finding funding. Yeah, absolutely. There's right now, I mean, honestly, you do just a quick search on private lenders for real estate, and I don't know, maybe 20 to 30 pages will pop up. At that time when I started, I guess it was a bit less. So I would just suggest a quick search on Google, and just like funding, especially when you're going with like hard money lenders, do 2 to 3, like call 2 to 3 people and see which one works best for you, because same as contractors, not everybody's going to fit to what you're looking for. So do your due diligence on that as well.
Is there one particular thing that you say to completely avoid, like a way that they do business that you find is not where you should go?
Not really. I guess they're pretty well. All the ones I've worked with, they're pretty reputable companies, and the only thing I guess would be to make sure that they're gonna follow through with that money, because there could be times where, you know, I've had that happen to me actually before, where they called you a week in advance and before you're closing and say, sorry, I can't lend to you anymore. So maybe try to get a commitment out of them that, you know, if they don't commit to sending you that money, then you're kind of, there's some like kind of slap on the wrist for them if they don't follow through with their word.
So is there a contract that you try to do with them to hold them accountable as well?
Yeah, it will depend on the lender you're working with. Most of the time they have their own documents that they work with. And, you know, I've been perfectly fine with that because it protects him and it protects me as well. If they don't, then definitely, you know, use your own, like a promissory note. And sometimes they require for you to put them on like the deed as like a mortgagee interest, I think it's called, to where, you know, if you stop making payments, they can take over the property just like a bank. Yeah,
sure. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, let's wrap this up with one question. I'm going to ask each of you and give me your 3. Well, let's do 2. Let's do your top 2 things that you want to make sure happens, and then the top 2 things that you want to avoid. So, Arvi, we're going to start with you and talk about those that are on obtaining the property and doing the actual flipping part of it or the design part of it. And then Dave will talk to you about the hiring the subcontractors and actually being the general contractor for the project.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess on my side, when you're looking at getting a property, first things first, when you're speaking with the seller, just try to build rapport with them. Don't try to sell yourself as much. Their position, they probably don't want to be in that position that they're in. So they have a problem that they're going through. So just kind of sympathizing with them. And obviously you're not going to get rid of all their problems, but by them selling to you, they're getting rid of, maybe one less problem that they have. So sympathizing with them, just trying to build rapport with them is like my number one tip on when you're trying to get off market properties. And in terms of, I guess, design and flipping in general, I would probably say what I kind of mentioned before, make sure that you're not over flipping and, putting so much into it, because everybody sees those HGTV shows and they think, when you're flipping houses, it's always going to look, shiny and over the top. And that's not the case. You got to check your neighborhood, see what they're selling for, and see what their standard is for the neighborhood, and then go off of that instead of trying to over rehab.
That's a real smart point there, that you don't want to over design your home or over build your home or reflip, or I guess flip your home to where it's like the Taj Mahal in the middle of an average neighborhood. You don't want to do that. That's a great point there. What about you, Dave? What you got? I'm sorry, did you have something else?
I was just gonna say, because it still will sell for the same price, so you're just kind of putting money when you don't have to.
Yep, you're exactly right. Go ahead, Dave.
For contractors, the biggest tip I have for contractors is don't go for the cheapest. It might seem easier just to make that decision, but sometimes it's just we've learned our lessons. And don't go for the cheapest contract, because their quality of work will definitely show, and it just brings down the price of the house. Second thing I would say is if you're flipping, if you're just starting off with flipping, be at every stage of the rehab. You have to get your hands dirty a little bit. You definitely have to get your hands dirty a little bit. Be aware of what they do and ask a lot of questions, like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? It might sound a little bit annoying, but that way for your next flip, it took us maybe, and not saying I'm an expert, but I know exactly how to flip a house now from start to finish.
Right.
And that's all because I just was part of the whole process from start to finish.
That's great advice. That's great advice. And of course, you're going to learn as you go. Let me ask one more question, and then we're going to have to wrap this up, guys, because I know you're very busy people. Is there any resource, and maybe it's just as simple as a Facebook group, is there a resource that you have found that is very helpful, that if you have questions yourself, I mean, I know you guys have been doing this for a couple of years now, but if you have questions yourself, is there a resource you would recommend others to go to, especially when starting out?
Absolutely. It's actually what you said, those Facebook groups. Every market now, I think, has at least a local real estate investing group. There's a lot of different people there from terms of experience and level of, like if they've done it, or maybe there's people that have not done it. So a lot of questions are asked there that people are just willing to share their information on how you can do better, or, how to avoid problems or things like that. And my next go-to is honestly Google and YouTube. a lot of free information out there. So, you might as well use it to your advantage.
I think that you should be able to get a degree from the University of Tube, because everybody uses it as a resource. And there's a lot of great information on there.
Absolutely.
A lot of great information. So, well, guys, thanks so much for joining us. I've looked forward to this all week. I think that this is something that a lot of people have been interested in, and hopefully there are a lot of questions that were asked in the comments that we weren't able to get to.
Yeah.
So I ask you guys, if you have a moment just to go through those and kind of respond to them, that would be great, so that we can answer those questions for the people. And if you guys have any other questions, just type them in the comment, and I can reach out to Arvi and Dave and see if we can't get the answers for you if we have the time. But guys, thank you so much for joining us again. And I wish you best of luck with all your projects.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here.
Yes. Have a good one. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week. Next week, we actually have Angie Knight that'll be here with Grand Strand Law Group, and she'll talk to us about some of her programs that she is working with on real estate and different things that you can look for when choosing a real estate attorney. Until next time, we'll see you right here on Myrtle Beach Living Live. Take care.